Good. Are we ready to go? Yes. Yes? Excellent. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Are we ready to go?
Yeah, we're ready to go.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. And welcome to this press conference hosted by WWF. That's the Worldwide Fund for Nature. May the brackets fall like the snow outside. That was our hope today and for the rest of the days that we're here in these final crucial days at COP15. So we came here together at this press conference to assess the outcome of the high-level segment after the stock-taking plenary. My name is Bernadette Fischler-Hooper, and I'm the head of international advocacy with WWF UK, and I'm joined here with some outstanding WWF colleagues. So here's what we're going to do today. First, we will hear from Florian Tietze. He's the policy advisor for international biodiversity with WWF Germany and our resident expert on finance. It's about the hottest topic on the street at the moment. After that, Lucia Ruiz, the biodiversity and finance coordinator with WWF Mexico, will tell us about 30 by 30. Then we will hear from Guido Broekhoven, over there, the head of policy research and development, WWF International, on the fate of the footprint target. And he will pass on to Manuel Burgo-Vidal, the leader of WWF's climate and energy practice, who will update us on the current status on the nature-based solutions. And then I will tell you a little bit about the mission. We will each present our key points for about 3 minutes, and then there will be, of course, time for questions. And as always, we will also be available afterwards at the back of the green room for further questions or any to dive deeper into any topics. So let's get started. Florian, over to you.
Thank you, Bernadette. I want to start with a quick look back to over the last decade, because we're kind of zoomed in here, but it's worth looking back what happened over the last decade with the previous biodiversity targets that were agreed 12 years ago in Aichi in Japan. Because here everyone knows that part of the failure of the Aichi targets was that a financing agreement was not agreed at the same time with those targets. And at the moment, we are at risk of making the same mistake again and let history repeat itself by not getting the full package, a comprehensive package on financing agreed at COP15, along with ambitious targets to halt and reverse biodiversity loss. And we have a monumental task ahead of us over this decade to the end of the decade. And we often hear leaders, including those here in the negotiations, that nature is our life insurance. That quote I've heard quite a lot, yet those leaders don't seem to find the money to pay for that. And that's really concerning because, again, it's a monumental task that we have ahead of us. In the current negotiation, the lack of agreement is essentially about two things. One is the amount of resources, of financial resources that are required. And the other is what are the ways that these financial resources are supposed to get delivered where they are towards where they're most needed, mostly in developing countries where the main remaining biodiversity is left on our planet. And what's most important really is that, again, as I said, we cannot repeat the same mistakes of the past, and that at the least, immediate financing is available for the implementation, because we already have only 8 years left until the end of the decade. And we have various proposals on the table where there's a lot of disagreement left between parties. So we need to find a way to, once we leave Montreal and we want to start implementing the agreement, that we can start right away. And for that, we need to quickly find the resources that are required for that. And we must look long-term to ensure sustainable financing in an efficient way, accessible by developing countries, so we can implement. So as a last thing, I want to say this agreement cannot be jeopardized by a lack of political agreement. It's way too important. The stakes are too high, and nature and the people who depend on it cannot wait. We need to start right away and improve and do it better than we did the last time around. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Florian, for this great overview on the state of finance. Over to Lucia, about 30 by 30.
Thank you, Bernadette. So from the stock take session and the latest negotiations and conversations, there is a positive, helpful sense of agreement for a 30 by 30 target to achieve an ambitious global biodiversity framework. However, the emphasis needs to be put on how to ensure that elements of biodiversity conservation that have been ignored in the past are integrated into this target now. As Chile's Minister of the Environment highlighted, 30 by 30 is not just a number. It is a beacon to effectively contribute to conservation, protection, and restoration, in which indigenous peoples will play a fundamental role. Indigenous peoples manage or have tenure rights over at least 38 million square kilometers throughout the 5 continents, representing over a quarter of the world's land surface. In this context, WWF fully recognizes the value that Indigenous peoples and local communities play to inclusively achieve an ambitious 30 by 30 that also incorporates the right to free, prior, and informed consent. And this needs to be included in Target 3. Also, as Colombia, China, and other countries mentioned in the stocktake session earlier today, we need to make bold decisions on 30 by 30 and include sustainable use, as each protected area has its own regime of governance, and recognizing collective lands of indigenous peoples is not only because of political reasons. It's also because there is science-based information that demonstrates that lands under their management are better protected than many other parts of the world. As WWF, we call on all leaders and parties to accelerate negotiations with an active, bold, and ambitious approach for this new biodiversity framework. The time is now. Indigenous peoples and local communities need to be given a recognition and included for the first time in a conservation target as 30 by 30, contributing to a rights-based approach. Over to you, Bernadette.
Thanks so much, Lucia. Yes, 30 by 30 is not just a number. Another really important topic is the footprint, and Guido is going to tell us now more about that.
Thank you very much. I didn't coordinate my opening sentence with my colleague here, but I also do want to take you back to 2015, in my case, when the Sustainable Development Goals were adopted. Sustainable Development Goal number 12 commits countries to ensure sustainable production and consumption patterns by 2030. To ensure, not to aspire or to work towards, but very clearly to ensure sustainable production patterns. And the science is very clear. In order to get there, we need to reduce the footprint of production and consumption. At current rates, we need more than 1.5 planets. Now, the global biodiversity framework can play and has to play an important role in that reduction of the footprint of production and consumption. We hope that that can still be achieved, but there's still a lot of work to be done to come to that ambitious consensus. We believe that 3 things need to be done. First of all, the concept and the idea that ecological footprint needs to be reduced, that needs to be firmly ingrained in the framework, particularly in Goal B. Secondly, that needs to be quantified. Where do we want to be by 2030? We need to have a specific number that reflects the aspiration that is needed. And we realize that the global footprint of production and consumption is a global goal, and that there's huge inequalities across countries and regions of the world, and that needs to be reflected also in that goal. The third important element is that the framework needs to articulate how to get there, what actions need to be undertaken. And I just want to draw your attention to a few of the targets that specify that action. Target 10 on the reform of productive sectors, agriculture, fisheries, forestry, etc. Currently, the language there risks being weak. It doesn't talk about how much of the areas need to be reformed. It doesn't talk about the promising methods and approaches that can be applied to achieve sustainable production and consumption patterns. Then there is the role of businesses in Target 15, where mandatory reporting requirements on the risks and exposures of business to biodiversity and biodiversity loss has not been agreed yet. many businesses themselves ask for the inclusion of that mandatory reporting requirement. And also the specific reduction of their negative impact needs to be reflected in that target. And finally, target 16 on consumption. Overconsumption is a challenge, and that needs to be addressed. It needs to be articulated and addressed at an ambitious level in the framework. Now, we're particularly concerned that in the report that we heard just now in the stocktake plenary, that the reference to the need to reduce footprint was not included in the report back to the plenary. We believe that there's many unresolved issues there, and that needs to be resolved and become part of the overall package that needs to be agreed here. Unless you address the root causes, it will be much more difficult to achieve your conservation goals, and it will be much more costly to restore nature later. There is still time. We hope that it can be achieved. It is an important element of the package. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Guido. So 30 by 30 plus footprint, that's our recipe for success. But what about nature-based solutions? Over to Manuel.
Thank you, Bernadette. So it is clear that after the tensions, difficulties, and contentious relations during the technical segment that finished yesterday, we started Saturday, today, with more sense of hope and optimism that by the end of this COP an agreement, it could be possible. And that is something that it is happening with nature-based solutions. We know how much opposition we heard around nature-based solutions and its inclusion in different parts of the text. And after the closing of the technical negotiations and in the non-paper that we saw today early in the morning, we have seen nature-based solutions. It is true, still on brackets, but it has been kept in the paragraph 20, in target 8, and target 11. And in my point of view, that is happening because there is a clear sense of understanding of the importance of having the Biodiversity Convention and the Global Biodiversity Framework exercising the role of the authority of nature in relation to a so important instrument that nature-based solutions that, as I've already mentioned, it has already gotten a strong political traction. We know that nature-based solutions, it is an instrument that it has been already recognized in a multilateral process by UNEA 5.2, by UNCCD, by Ramsar Convention, and some weeks ago by COP27. So it is important to have the CBD recognizing its role, because if not, the level of loss that this convention could suffer, it would be huge. Now let me move to a second topic, the action agenda. We all have seen the momentum that it has been created for this COP. The level of participation, the dynamic, the different ideas, interventions, pavilions, actions, etc. Because of all the effort and based in the whole of society approach to make this convention and this GBF a strong one. And the big challenge is how can we keep this momentum alive? In that sense, as champion of the action agenda within the CBD, it has been great that because of the report that I gave today in the closing of the high-level segment, we have already announced the next steps. And the idea it is to strengthen the action agenda to immediately after the closing of COP15, we can start to implement. The only way to implement the GBF, it is by convening the whole of society and by having all the actors working together. My message to you all, to the media, that I hope that you can transmit, it is that we will never go back to what used to be negotiations under this convention. We have to keep this momentum alive, and we have to convene all the sectors, all the organizations, all the institutions, all the indigenous people, all the cities, to continue working together in the implementation of the GBF. So welcome to the strengthening of the action agenda for nature.
Thanks so much, Manuel. So let me tell you a little bit about the mission now. So the ministers here, like many presidents and prime ministers before, have time and again confirmed that we need to halt and reverse the loss of biodiversity by 2030, and that this should be the mission of the GBF. So far, so good. But And that's a really big but. The goals and targets need to add up to this mission. And at the moment, after the stock take, there are some really serious concerns that that might not be the case. We do not want that the mission to halt and reverse the loss of biodiversity is going to be the pretty wrapping paper around an ugly package at the end. The stock take today has shown that we're not quite there yet. There's still much to do and no time left. The day after tomorrow, we will know if governments have failed people and planet or not. If this goes right, it will be a historic moment. Leaders will have pulled the planet back from the brink. They have shown their commitment to people and planet. They have delivered a once-in-a-decade global deal that will halt and reverse the loss of biodiversity by 2030 and lead to a nature-positive future. But if this goes wrong, there will be no coming back. We came to COP15 saying that this needs to be the Paris moment for biodiversity. Now we hear many asking, oh, might it maybe be a Copenhagen moment instead? Let me be very clear, this will not be a Copenhagen moment, because Copenhagen, as ugly as it was, ultimately led to Durban and then to Paris. If Montreal fails, that's the end of the road. It's game over for the GWF. There will be no second bite on that cherry. There will be no Paris after Copenhagen. This must be the Paris moment here in Montreal, because there is no second chance. It's the only chance. So this is the only chance to get this right. So that's it from us. It's time for questions. Could you please, if you're a journalist, identify yourself and then give us your name and your outlet, and let's try to keep it short so we get as many questions in as possible. Wow, there are already quite a lot. Let's start here in the front and then go to the gentleman with the red face mask. Please go ahead.
Thank you for your kind presentation. This is Juan Mayorga from Mexico, reporting with Sin Embargo and the Earth Journalism Network. My question is like to any of you who want to pick it. I want you to please elaborate on the threats of having a watered-down ambition in this agreement in the rush for pushing it out in time. I mean, which specific situations do you see as being sacrificed for this lack of ambition in order to explain that to our audiences?
Super, thanks. Can we take also the question from the gentleman behind? Oh, you've got a microphone.
Thanks. Yeah, Jack Graham, Thomson Reuters Foundation. I was wondering when the official text drops, what you'll be looking for in the text that could guarantee more accountability than there was after Aichi. So if that ambitious agreement drops, what's going to be in there to create a proper monitoring frameworks and accountability?
Okay, thanks very much. Let's take a third question, at least. I think here in the front, the lady, please.
Thank you. I have two questions. I'm Daisy Lara from Canal de la Ciudad. On finance, it seems that the creation of a new fund or not having nothing in new fund are not on finance are not options. Is creation a tool under the GEF the option that today could be the one that we're going to see at the last time on Monday, or which are the countries that are opposing on that also? And to Manuel, you were president of a climate COP. Which changes or actions should we need to see on the next 48 hours in order to make the progress that is needed? Thank you.
Thanks. Just to be fair, let's take a second person on this side as well. The lady with the white t-shirt, please.
Thanks. Madeleine Cuff from The New Scientist. It's a similar question to the one before for Florian. Do you think that the way forward on finance is to create a new fund, or what is the kind of main blockage on the finance? Is it the amount of money, or is it the structure of the financing, and how does that get solved in the next 48 hours? Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for this great bunch of questions. Let's start with Guido, who's going to take the first two.
Thanks. Yeah, for us, a comprehensive package includes ambition on conservation, ambition on addressing the drivers and the footprint, ambition on a strong implementation and accountability mechanism, and ambition on resources. And that is all contributing to halting and reversing biodiversity loss towards a nature-positive world. What we're concerned about is that in the mandate that was given to the ministerial pairs, the implementation mechanism and the footprint were not included in the work that they were given. We believe that there's still many unresolved issues also in these components of footprint and the implementation mechanism. Now, then I come immediately also to the question on how that implementation mechanism should look like. First of all, we need to have the numbers and the quantifications in goals and targets. We need to have a comprehensive set of indicators to measure these goals and targets. And then we need to have a process agreed where parties at regular moments review progress based on these numbers and these indicators. They come together to collectively review globally where they are towards achieving the goals and targets. And if they collectively come to the conclusion on the basis of that stock take that they're not on track, they need to act. They need to increase action to continue to stay or to get back on track to achieve the goals and targets. So it is that entire process that needs to take place through regular reporting, stock taking, reviewing, and increasing action over time. Thank you.
Thanks, Guido. So, like Guido said, particularly this ratchet element of the implementation mechanism is something that we sorely miss at the moment, and that would really improve the monitoring and accountability and transparency as well. Do you want to go next on the questions on finance? Here we go.
Thank you. And if it's okay, I would respond to both of these questions at the same time. I think that's fairly doable. So starting with the current challenges, I think that lead to a lot of this debate, which is not only the amounts very important. We don't have enough financing available currently to implement what we're trying to agree here, but it's also challenges of the efficiency and the access to that financing, especially in developing countries. And these challenges are more or less recognized, I think, across most of the countries here that are negotiating. What's currently on the table are essentially three options, and these are not mutually exclusive to one another. The first one is that we're looking at the existing financing architecture, including the GEF, reforming it and addressing these challenges, basically. The second one is that also under the GEF, we're creating sort of a new sub-instrument. That's the trust fund that's being discussed. And that is a particular suitable option for addressing the challenge of the immediate financing that is needed to actually start implementing right away. But there are a lot of different options that are technically different, that are where we don't know yet what parties would be able to agree on. And then there's a third option, which looks beyond the existing financing architecture, so beyond the GEF, creating something entirely new. And that is seen by some of the countries as a long-term solution. For us, it's really important that we're addressing those challenges of access and efficiency, and especially also anything that leads to an increase, a long-term, sustainable, and reliable increase of biodiversity financing. And therefore, as you said, what can happen in the next 48 hours, I think it's really important that a political agreement is done that can be accepted by all. If that is a compromise that is between those two options on the extreme sides, that would be great, but it's a political solution that needs to really come, and it needs to come urgently, because as we've heard, the ambition on the goals and targets is really dependent on that. It really is a no-go that we end up with a low ambition on the goals and targets, but then end up agreeing on the finance, because, yeah.
Thank you. I would like to make a comment to integrate the first three questions: ambition, accountability, resource mobilization. Because if we compare the current context in which we are negotiating the GBF with the time when we discussed the Aichi target, it is clear that the context has, fortunately, dramatically and positively changed. Why I'm saying this? Because when we think about ambition or accountability, for sure, it depends strongly on a good political signal by negotiators and by having a good GBF. But now we are not in an island with nobody around. There are many other elements that could make possible to continue enhancing ambition, to continue promoting accountability, to continue pushing for more resource mobilization. Let me put some examples. When we think about accountability, we have in the world an initiative that it is called SBTN, the Science-Based Target Network, which objective it is to define mechanism based on science to define targets in relation to nature and to reverse nature laws with a clear mitigation hierarchy. And that is happening despite of the result that we could have here. It is not that I am justifying something weak, for sure not. We have to continue pushing for something strong. But the current context, it is key. And that is why I will always continue demanding to keep this momentum alive, to keep the organizations working to promote that ambition, that accountability, and that resource mobilization. And in relation to your question, Thais, just one thing, this is the time of the presidency. The last 48 hours depends strongly on the ability and the manage and the hands of the presidency, because we won't have more contact group. The technical consultation or the technical segment, it has already finished. So this is the time in which, through the presidency, we will consult, we will negotiate, we will include, because the text will have different parts, and the point is where to allocate all those different demands and requests, and finally to align. So I hope that because of the hand of the presidency, we could have by the end of the 19th a good text that it could be adopted.
Okay, I think we can take maybe one quick question. This lady was the quickest.
Hi, thank you. Natasha Gilbert from Nature News. There's some disparity between what you're saying and what the presidency and the ministers are saying. There was just a press conference before this with where they said that they felt that there had been good progress, that some key things have been agreed, including the indicators, that there was a convergence towards 200 billion in terms of the financing, that there was agreement on DSI. Can you comment on that?
Sure. Yes, nobody's denying that there has been progress, but there's also, nobody's denying that there's still quite a way to go. And at this time, it's important to focus on what still needs to be fixed, because there's not that much time left. I'm looking at Guido, if you want to add to that, maybe. Okay, let's check the time. One more quick question. Really, no? Oh, sorry, okay, no. Like I said before, we will be found outside there. You can find us there, and we're very happy to continue this conversation and dive into any topic deeper. Thanks so much for being with us here today, and hope to see you again soon.